In these examples, all we're doing is writing out what the transformations would be. And they're different families, but the gist is the same. So we have kind of this like rule that we're looking at. So it's y equals a x minus h plus k. And all of these things are going to follow the same thing, but some of them have parentheses, some of them a square, some has a cube, might have absolute value symbols, but the rules are all the same. So your A is always going to be a vertical stretch. And then it could also be a vertical shrink. So vertical stretch would mean a number greater than 1. So if your A is bigger than 1, it's a stretch. It's a shrink if your A is less than 1. Your H value tells you that you're moving left and right, and it's the opposite sign of what you would think. So if you have a minus sign, it's actually going to move your graph to the right, and if you have a plus sign, it actually moves your graph to the left. And then your K value moves up and down, and that is what you'd expect it to be. So up is plus, down is minus. So let's take a look at these examples here. The first thing to notice is that we're talking about the cubic family. It didn't specifically ask us to say that, but I'm going to write it anyway. And I like to just start from the left and work my way to the right like I'm reading a sentence. So the first thing I notice here is that we've got a negative. So that means we're going to have a reflection. There's no other A value. So that means that we don't have a stretch or a shrink, so we just don't have to say anything. And then the only other thing is this plus 1. Since the plus 1 is in the parentheses, that means that it's going to be the opposite sign of what we think. And it's also going to be horizontal, so left or right. So since it looks like it should be plus 1 to the right, it's actually going to be 1 to the left. So I'm going to say shift left 1. And that's it. Those are the only two transformations that are going on in problem 7. Now let's take a look at problem 8. So the first thing I see is this 1/3. Since that's in front of our absolute value bars, that means it's our A value. And because 1/3 is smaller than 1, that means we have a vertical shrink. So I'm going to write vertical shrink by 1/3. I don't have any numbers in the absolute value bars. That means that there's no shift left or right, so I don't have to write anything there. And then I have this plus 4, and that's my K value. So that means I'm going to have this graph shift up 4. And then last but not least, number 9. I have a lot going on here. So the first thing I see is a negative. This negative tells me that this graph will be reflected. I also have an A value of 2. Since 2 is bigger than 1, this is going to be a vertical stretch by 2. I also have a number in the parentheses. That means I use the opposite sign. So this is going to be shifted right 1. And then last but not least, I have this minus 4. That's my K value. This is telling me that I have a shift down 4.